Welcome back to another episode of Distorted Opinions. Matt couldn't join us this episode, so Ted and I thought this might be a good time to do a tech talk on drums, and more specifically on cymbals. If there's one instrument that I know next to nothing about, it's drums. The extent of my knowledge is the difference between a kick, a snare, a tom, and cymbals. I don't know the differences between the cymbals. So, Ted, I'm hoping that you can educate and enlighten myself and any of our viewers or listeners who might be in a similar situation to me. So, what are we going to be talking about today?
So, I've been playing drums for basically 18 years now, and in that time, certainly had a lot of experience trying different cymbals, learning about the different sizes and tones, and what effects you can get out of the different cymbals that are available. I mean, there's so many different kinds.
Sure.
Just to clear the air for anyone that's a drummer, I am a Sabian guy. I know you can stop listening now if you don't like Sabian. And if you're not aware, Sabian and Zildjian tends to have a bit of a Red Sox-Yankees rivalry at times. So I've planted my flag on Sabian. So the reason why I like Sabian over Zildjian, in the tones that Sabian gives to me, it's a bit more of a smoother sound. Has more of a flow to it. I feel like Zildjian cymbals are a bit more tinny in tone when they are hit. Clearly, like I believe Metallica plays Zildjian. There's plenty of mainstream musicians using all different varieties.
Sure.
But my personal preference and jamming with my friends and whatnot, I'm a Sabian guy. So it's just my own ears that drive the decision on that.
Sure.
So as when you first start playing drums, you're basically you have your ride cymbal, 22-inch, big cymbal ride, a crash cymbal, and hi-hats.
Okay.
Basic intro for cymbals. And
Sure.
Over the years, I've been amassing more and more and more cymbals, so it looks like a Neil Peart kit. So it's kind of gotten out of hand. So I do have a few examples to mention on the podcast for today. So first off is I have it's an HHX splash cymbal. So this particular, everyone's aware of a crash, big tone, loud, gets a
Sounds
attention,
like a
if
crash.
you will. Sounds like a crash, right?
Okay.
So the splash sound, because the cymbal is so much smaller, this is a 10-inch. Crash cymbals are 14 to 18, inches. So the diameter is bigger. There's more material for the vibrations to go into. So that changes the tone altogether. So less material, higher pitch. It dissipates quicker. So it's as light, nice and quick. So
Sure.
I really enjoy, this is my only splash cymbal. But I definitely feel like it adds a different flavor. If you are playing a song and you don't need to, kill the room with a crash cymbal, you want to just, flutter in an extra cymbal sound,
Sure.
you can use a splash cymbal pretty effectively for that.
Okay.
So, this is still very thin, so it does have that bright sound.
Mm-hmm.
And some fun facts about you might notice that cymbals have grooves around the inside. They're pretty much machined, more or less, in a lot of cases. So those are called tonal grooves.
Okay.
And so that is a way for the vibrations to travel through over the surface of the cymbal.
Okay.
So the deeper the grooves, the vibrations have more space to spiral out, as opposed to thinner grooves, which just glisten off the side.
Okay.
So deeper grooves means you get more response. If you don't hit it hard enough, you're going to get a bong sound. So it really, depending on the cymbal and how it was made, depends on how you hit it for the most effective type of sound.
Okay. So it
So
sounds like there's a lot of different things that affect the sound. You've got the size, you've got the grooves,
mhm,
and then the way you hit it obviously makes a difference.
sure. And
Okay.
so definitely, just looking at a couple of others, um, you know, for ride cymbals in particular, the bell of the cymbal here sometimes is grooved.
Okay.
The splash and my crashes that I have right here are not. So again, that's just another way for it to change the pitch. A lot of times you're playing the ride cymbal and you're hitting basically the bell of the ride cymbal with your stick, and it gives
Okay.
it that nice little cowbell-ish type of tone,
Sure.
and kind of changes up the sound that you can get on a particular cymbal.
Okay.
You can hit the bell of your crashes if you want to. It's not really meant for that. I feel like a lot of my crashes are very thin on the bell, so it doesn't really make a lot of sense.
Okay.
It's not as robust as a ride cymbal, if you will. So,
Okay.
um, so yeah,
Gotcha.
so that's some initial fun facts about that.
Okay. So I know you talked about tonal grooves, size of the cymbals.
Mm-hmm.
So this might be a really newbie, no clue about drums question, no clue about cymbals particularly. Are all cymbals made of brass or are they made of different materials? And if they are made of different materials, how does that affect the sound of the cymbal?
Well, I mean, I would say most definitely have the particular brass appearance. I'm
Sure.
milled, and I would say 90. In my guess, my opinion, it feels like 97% of cymbals are pretty much unanimous in construction and
Okay.
the materials. There are plenty of other materials used, but again, that goes into how you're getting the vibration to resonate through the cymbal,
Okay.
and you want to make sure that you know it'll be durable for
Sure.
gigs. You
Okay.
want to make sure it holds up. I've broken a cymbal.
Oh, geez.
My very first cymbal I ever ever bought on my drum set, I didn't know how to play. Was learning, and if you have a thin cymbal and you hit it too hard, the cymbal. If you ever go watch a YouTube video of a cymbal being hit and it
Okay.
just literally looks like this in
Sure.
slow motion, it's really
Sure.
cool. But the thinner the cymbal, the less force it takes to get that tone,
Sure.
to get the proper tone out of that cymbal. And if you hit it too hard, eventually you'll crack it,
Oh boy.
and eventually that crack will, break a piece off, and
Sure.
then it's more or less garbage.
Oh
So
boy.
definitely need to be aware of how you're hitting it to make sure you're not going to eventually break it.
Okay. So
So
that's kind of like in guitar terms, that would be like over plucking your high E string. If you do
easily,
that too hard, you're gonna snap the string and it's useless to you. So hitting a
exactly.
thin cymbal, you can break it easily if you hit it too hard, and then it's useless.
Right.
Okay.
So, I mean, as much as it's made of metal, you can ruin a cymbal.
Sure.
So, my cymbals that I've purchased more recently, I have a Studio Crash. This is a 16-inch, and so this is a bit more, a little bit thicker than
Sure.
that thin Crash that I've broken in the past.
Okay.
The tone I really, really like. I mean, I'm just a light tap because I'm not trying to blow out the microphone.
Sure.
But so I've got a 16, and I recently also purchased a 17-inch.
Okay.
So when we're talking about different sizes and the different sounds that you can get on the different cymbals, 1 inch can make a big difference in the two tones.
Okay.
So I'm going to do.
Oh, wow.
So I mean, again, it's a different uh, material. I mean, not material, different thickness. It's a different diameter.
Okay.
But 1 inch can certainly make a big difference
Sure.
between two crash cymbals
Sure.
from the same brand.
And the 17 inch is the one that made the lower sound?
Correct.
Okay.
So the deeper, so the smaller the
The higher the
higher
pitch.
pitch,
Okay.
less vibration is needed to get the tone.
Sure.
More effort is needed on their bigger cymbals,
Okay.
but you get a lower tone.
Sure.
So I play a lot of, I like a lot of rock style.
Sure.
No duh, given all my
I don't think our
recommended
audience has
songs.
figured that out based off
Yeah,
of the
right.
song of the
So
week picks.
definitely, I like a lower tone cymbal. And
Sure.
so when I found this at Guitar Center, I was pretty excited about it.
Nice.
Um, so that's another aspect of it.
Okay. So another sound question. So I've noticed in posts from various music stores online and different drum sites and Instagram accounts that I do follow that there are cymbals that have holes in them. And then obviously there are cymbals that do not have holes in them. So what exactly do the holes do to the sound? Why would you want a cymbal that has holes in it?
Well, again, it's all in the sound that the drummer is going for.
Okay.
You're taking material out. I mean, all the cymbals that I've shown you, um, you know, having the entire surface there to
Sure.
have the vibrations travel through,
Yep.
obviously gives a certain sound.
Sure.
If you have holes in particular cymbals, I knew you were going to ask this question, so I brought this. So this China, for example, has numerous drilled holes through the surface,
Okay.
and again, that's just making the sound. It hits the sound different, so it's trying to travel in a different path, and it
Okay.
gives a more unique type of sound.
Okay.
So that's another factor. There are I've seen some cymbals that have holes in them that people will just lay on top of another cymbal. So they
Okay.
basically stack cymbals, but because it's so, based on the shape of the first cymbal
Hmm.
and how it interacts with the cymbal underneath, it gives a very unique sound. It's kind of a trashy type of, it's a unique sound. I've been tempted to set one up myself, but I'm running out of space for adequate cymbal stands.
Sure.
I have too many cymbals going already. So, there's definitely some creative ways and creative cymbals in that sense that you can kind of start stacking and getting a very unique, customized sound
Okay.
to get exactly what you're looking for.
Okay. Gotcha. Interesting. All right. So I didn't know any of this about cymbals. This is so cymbals to drummers would be probably like guitars to guitar players. You can never have too many of them, and they
That's the
all
way I
have
look at
different
it.
sounds.
Yeah,
And obviously, I would assume, there's cost variations across the different sizes and the different brands. Um,
absolutely.
what are the price ranges typically? I know obviously they're going to vary based on the type of cymbal,
And the
but
size, yeah. Um, I mean, you can sometimes get some good deals for used gear at Guitar Center.
okay.
Um, but for the most part, a crash cymbal on its own,
Hmm.
$220.
Wow. Okay.
Um, ride cymbals can, I mean, the bigger the cymbal tends to, increase the price.
Sure.
Um, I think this Chad Smith Sabian China, I think I got this for, I think it was 260 or something like
Wow.
that.
Okay.
So it definitely takes time
Sure.
to amass all these,
Sure.
play drums for 18 years, and then every couple of years you buy another one. So all of
Sure.
a sudden it seems crazy.
Sure.
But yeah, overnight, setting up a new kit with like Neil Peart is unrealistic. It's too expensive to be fair.
Sure, sure. Well, and I would think, presumably, aside from the cost, there's also understanding the need for those and
Mhm.
understanding the basics of playing drums. It's kind of like with guitar. I mean, you can never have too many, but why spend an exorbitant amount of money on a guitar if you don't really know how to play it and you haven't quite figured that out, and I mean, maybe if you're just starting, you're not even sure you're going to stick with it. So
Right.
I feel like it's one of those deals where you would start out with a basic kit, as you described at the beginning here, and then as you get to understand how everything works and you get better with your playing, you add more things into it until you're at a point where you are, where you've ended up with a collection of more symbols than you have stands to
To
put
be
them
fair,
on.
I get to use all of them in a single jam, so I
Oh,
I get my money's worth every time.
okay. All right. All right. So they're getting used. That's
Yeah,
always
yeah,
good. Nothing
yeah.
worse than gear that's collecting dust and not getting used.
Sure.
I'm in that boat myself.
So one thing I just thought of,
Mm,
speaking of starter symbols
sure.
versus more advanced. So there's something called a China symbol,
Sure.
which obviously this is what this is.
Yep.
It's a very unique shape. It's more or less an inverted symbol
Right. It's kind
with
of divoted.
an outer curve on the edge.
Hmm.
And so when I first, I mean, I think I might have been a freshman in college. Guitar Center had a deal. It was a $20. It was called the Wuhan China symbol, and it
Okay.
was maybe 12 inches. It
Okay.
was maybe a little bit bigger than this,
Sure.
and more or less, obviously, still had the curved edge,
Sure.
but $20,
Wow.
super cheap. So I can't afford a new cymbal. I'm going to go to Guitar Center and get this, $20
Sure.
China. And to be fair, it's lasted a long time.
Do you still have it?
It's on. I got creative. It's mounted on top of my hi hat.
Okay. Okay. I
So
have seen that. Yes.
yeah, so I basically turned my hi hat into its own cymbal stand.
Okay.
But so that is a $20 China cymbal.
Wow.
It's the sound you get is what you would expect for $20.
Sure.
It's not great, but to be fair, I've never beaten the crap out of it, so it's
Sure.
lasted a long time.
Okay.
So I still have that. But last year, when I had a couple of gift cards to Guitar Center, I
Hmm.
wanted to actually invest in a real good China cymbal and go in and sound legit.
Sure.
So that's where I picked this up.
Okay.
And this was on the floor in Guitar Center, and I fell in love with it. And it's also a Chad Smith signature. Chad Smith from Red Hot Chili
Sure.
Peppers.
Yep.
Um, so just to give you an idea, so it has this weird bongy tone to it.
Sure.
With this stick, it'll cut through a room.
Oh, sure.
So, and again, not trying to blast the microphone here, but
Sure.
definitely it is I think the loudest cymbal I have. It
Okay.
will. It's awesome. It is so awesome. The
Nice.
tone when you can hit it with the stick is amazing.
Sure.
Um,
Sure.
but yeah, so I'm very happy with that. But again, you have to be, dedicated to your instrument
Hmm.
to warrant, spending the money
Sure.
for one cymbal
Sure.
to get that sound that you're looking for. Because I can do all these things, but I don't have anything that does this.
Hmm.
So that's what put me on the hunt for this particular cymbal.
Sure. It's an investment.
Right. And
Sure.
I've got so many cymbals anyway, so
Right.
it's never enough.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. No. And I assume that, it takes a skilled player. Like, I know for me personally. So, while I know nothing about drums, I did, as you know, have a kit for a period of time because my mom, for many years, wanted to learn to play drums, and my dad bought her a relatively inexpensive PV starter kit for
It was
Christmas many
blue, I
years ago.
remember
It was, yes.
it.
And it came with the basics. It had, I'm not even sure it had three cymbals. I think it had the hi-hat, and it might have been the
One
crash.
crash and the ride cymbal. Yep.
Yeah. And so I tried to sit down a few times and play it, and I learned very quickly that I'm not coordinated enough to play drums. While I've played many instruments, there are a few that require more coordination than I have. The doing two things at the same time with your hands and then having to include your feet into the mix is just, I could never get the grasp. But if there's one thing I know is that I would probably just beat the crap out of the drums and stuff because I don't really know how to, play them lightly. And I assume that that's a skill that you kind of have to learn to be able to add some variation to, I guess it would maybe be the volume of your playing based off of
Mhm.
how hard you hit. And so I feel like the beginner drummer, and you might be able to speak to this more than me, is probably going to be like me and beat the
Oh yeah,
crap out of those.
I beat the crap out of my drums for sure. Honestly, again, I talked about the broken cymbal. Like it
Right,
can be done
right.
if you play too hard.
Sure.
And I think a lot of that, new playing, you want to sound like the rock star. You want to be loud because if you've ever been to a concert, like drums are already loud, but like you want to, you know, feel like the harder you hit, or you might be moving faster. If you're
Sure.
trying to do a fill and then you're
Sure.
just hitting fast just to be fast and
Sure.
not really putting control behind it. So that kind of plays a factor as well. But yeah,
Sure.
been there, done that.
Yeah. But I assume it does, take you know, maybe I'm not speaking in correct terms here, but maybe more skill to be able to reel it in and play quieter. So maybe, for example, like jazz drumming. I know we had talked about that in another show um, where we interviewed Marcus, and Marcus plays a lot of jazz. I feel like jazz drumming tends to be a little bit softer and
There's more instruments doing it's not like a rock show where the
right,
guitar player can just crank it up, or
right,
you're not. I mean, for the most part, those a lot of those styles you're playing to the volume of the other instruments.
sure,
In jazz, you have to do the same, but now you're dealing with sax players, and
sure,
so now you're trying to blend. I mean, you're blending either way because you don't want to just be drums as much as some drummers like. It's not bad to be solo, but
sure,
not really meant to be that way.
right,
But yeah, it's just trying to be able to blend. So it does take some control in the force that you're putting behind it. And again, that extends to the cymbals, as I said, just
sure,
because you can overdo it. Um, Even in the middle of a song, pick any song. Cymbals are used in just about most of the songs that we listen to anyway.
sure,
And if you overdo it, you're really putting emphasis in a place that it doesn't need it. It
sure,
was supposed to be a filler, or a supportive type of sound, and
right.
now you've just kicked the door in like the Kool-Aid Man.
That's a great analogy. Awesome. All right. Well, I know I've learned quite a bit about symbols that I did not know, so I feel definitely more educated than I did coming into this. And you certainly answered my burning question of why there would be holes in symbols. Is there anything else that we didn't cover that you want to add about symbols? I know obviously other aspects of drumming we could certainly cover, and they could be topics in themselves, so we'll hit those in another show. But is there anything else on symbols that we didn't touch on that you wanted to add?
Sure. Actually, there is one thing. A
Sure.
lot of these symbols, and you probably could see on this one in particular. Let's see if we can get it right there.
The pits?
So you can see like these bumps right here.
Yeah.
A lot of these bumps in numerous symbols, this being one example, a lot of these are actually hand tapped.
Really?
So you wonder why the price is a little high. There's a lot of actual handwork,
Sure.
with their hands, hammers, literally adding the dents
Wow.
into the cymbals to get the particular sound.
Okay.
So, some of it, the tonal grooves, as I mentioned, a lot of that can be done by machine, but
Sure.
a lot of Cymbals, Sabian, Zildjian, name your brand, you know, a lot of that particular sound that you're getting, you know, that flow is altered by those taps, and it's kind of a you know, the handcrafted aspect of the cymbal also, you know, changes the price too. But
Sure.
it adds that, you know, unique sound. You might get, you know, as close. You know, no two cymbals are exactly alike because of
Sure.
that,
Sure.
within reason.
Mhm.
But you know, that's just another fun fact. If you've never really taken the, you know, learned how they make cymbals, you know,
Sure.
there's a lot of handcrafted handcrafting that goes into making a cymbal too.
Awesome. And so this might be a question, maybe you don't know the answer to this, but is there a reason why that particular aspect of cymbal making isn't machined? Is it because of the randomness of the pattern that they're hammering in, or do you know if there's a reason?
I honestly don't.
Okay.
I think I can guess, you know, that, you know, the people that are making it, you know, they're the way they do it, the way it's always been done. This is the way we make our cymbals. You
Sure.
know, it has a legacy to it,
Sure.
and uh, a fingerprint, if you will, to the cymbal that you would not be able to have if it were machined.
Sure.
So
Okay.
I think that has an impact on it, but I mean, might need to call Sabian themselves.
That's all right. It's
They're in
not a
Canada.
pressing.
I
I
think they're
was
in our time zone too.
Oh, are
So
they?
yeah,
Nice. Okay. Yeah, no, I mean, it's not a I was just curious as to whether or not you knew the reason. I mean, I'm sure it's like, yeah, I'm all for handcrafted stuff. I still love supporting companies that make stuff by hand, and some of my favorite guitars are, I know, handcrafted and a little less, I guess, machined.
Mhm.
Matt and I talked about it during the guitar gear talk that we did a while back. That one of the things about my Parker that makes them so high priced and highly sought after is the fact that they were handmade and there was a lot of customization that went into them, and they have a very unique look and a very unique sound, and they had a lot of custom parts, and they don't make them anymore, so it's really hard to find. The company that bought them out makes a lot of guitars. I should look it up. I think they make like Washburn. Um, I'm not sure if it's the same company that owns Fender. I think it's US Music. And so the problem is when they bought it out, those guitars were a little too handcrafted for the way they manufacture their other guitars and too time consuming. And so while I think they still own the brand, they no longer make the guitars because there's just too much that goes into them. So I have a lot of respect for companies that do put a lot of handcrafting and customization into their instruments. So I think it's really cool that they're hand hammering those divots into the cymbals and not doing that by a machine. So it's more just a curiosity if there's a technical reason for why they can't do that, or if they just prefer to do it by hand. I think it's
I'm
great
going to
that they
say that they
are.
prefer to do it. And honestly, just looking at the cymbal right now, um, the distances between these hits, the dimples are definitely man-made.
Yeah,
It's kind of fun.
nice.
Yeah, it's definitely not a machined item for sure. I mean,
Sure,
within reason, there's definitely parts of it that are.
sure.
Um, like I would even go as far as this inner,
Mm,
like this inner piece section here. It's like they do all the tapping first, and then they drill the holes through
sure,
after it's done. But
sure,
yeah, like you just the grooves here under close inspection, they're all slightly off.
sure.
So yeah, definitely
Awesome.
another cool fun fact.
Okay, very cool. Anything else you want to add?
I think that should wrap it up for
All
today.
right,
I mean,
all right.
obviously, I could probably ramble a little bit longer for different things, but
Sure.
I think we'll wrap up on Cymbals for
Okay.
now.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you very much. That was incredibly informative. I hope that our viewers and listeners found that informative as well. That's all the time we have for this show. But as always, if you've got an idea for a future topic or if you want to be considered as a guest, you can send us an email at distortedopinionshow@gmail.com. Don't forget, you can find us on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. And the show is available in podcast form on pretty much any of your favorite podcast platforms. If you head to anchor.fm/distortedopinions, you can find a list of all the platforms that we're on. And you can also leave us a voice message. So do that, and you might be part of a future segment on the show. But that's all for today, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Ted, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.